basically 17 years of running a advertising agency.
Inside of what Chris built is 1,300 different Python files.
One of our community members built his whole agency into one piece of software using Claude Code. It's 1,300 files big, it works, but it's a giant mess. So in this video, he hopped on a call with us and my partner Zach Lloyd helped him clean all of it up. Live, no script, no edits, just a real coaching call you would normally have to pay $500 an hour for. You're gonna see the file Chris calls the oh god button, 3 secret repos hiding inside each other, and the simple trick Zach uses to fix any AI-built codebase without breaking it. Here's the call. Fill me in on the whole situation, what you're building, what roadblocks you're running into, context for anybody else that watches this later down the line. We'd love that.
For sure. Okay, can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
awesome.
Cool. So this is the software that I used building Claude Code. I call it Agency OS. That's just our internal name for it. And it's basically 17 years of running a advertising agency, and all the knowledge that goes with that dumped into one place. So instead of having 7 to 10 different programs that you have to run to for an ad agency, you can just log in here and run an entire agency. At the top, we have some smoke tests and deep QA tests and security and so on. But down here is more of the fun stuff. You can get into this type of stuff here, see what type of clients, like we uploaded a list of our clients, and it broke it down into how many total they had, what their average household income is, what their average home value, average age, and then gives you a little bit of fun facts about them, stuff like that. And then we have a media planner, which you can take and let's go here, and it'll tell you how it would allocate the budget if you were to give it X amount of dollars and what it would do. This is the CRM part where you can actually take and move this along the pipeline and, throw that there. Or however, mark as Microsoft. There we go. It has carrier routes to show you like where people. So your post office delivery mail person, how they travel from all around to deliver mail is called a carrier route. So what this does is as you zoom in, it actually shows you the exact route that person goes and travels, and then tells you facts about that area to tell you whether you should use that or not. This is every billboard that Lamar has in Northwest Indiana. And as you can see, there's pictures of them here that are taken inside here. Website analytics to replace Google, where you can see how many people have come, and then the source of the traffic, what hours of the day it's busy, what type of device they're using. You can actually this actually has, if it works, we'll see. There's days this gives me fits. But it tells you how far down the page they scroll, what pages load performance has issues. This will actually give you a heat map when it wants to act correctly. Desktop. Do the thing. Not going to do the thing.
That's all right. Good. Okay, so
those, Chris, like just to see how they're interacting with the site. That's really awesome.
Yeah, so that's that. That's what we essentially have, plus a lot of other fun tools and other things. call intelligent, records phone calls, and does all bunch of stuff. So some things that are causing me fits. I found one of the big problems uh, is this lovely bit here, that it turns out that there's about through call it 350 or so, where when writing code, it was like, oh, we need something that's going to call this API code. And then I would code something the next day and it would just make another instance that calls that API code instead of using the same one. So something I've got to do over the next week is trim all of those down to one instance of instead of 3 and 5 of them. I found that out. That wasn't too pleasing. And then the other thing was what Zach and I talked about was adding OpenAI Codex in here as a check to help find some of the bugs that exist in the system in order to try to start correcting stuff and fixing it long term.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a really impressive application because you look at some of these tools and they could be actual full-blown softwares in themselves.
Yes.
So what you've built is amazing.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
you've done it in such a fast and efficient way that I think that's part of what is causing some of your issues. And so that's what we're going to dive into
Yep.
today, and what you do when you run into this, which
Yes, please.
all of us have
Completely.
ran into, and everybody will keep running into if you're not a software developer, like none of us are. And what I mean by that is none of us went to school and did all of these classes for the structural frameworks that take place when you're coding. And so
Yes.
we're all learning on the fly. And when you learn on the fly, some things are missed, right? So
Yep.
let me start with
100% true.
this. Can you guys see that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So first we're going to talk about refactoring. And so inside of what Chris built is 1,300 different Python files, okay? Which there's nothing wrong with that. But if he's going to boot up Codex Review, which he hasn't done yet, and we're going to get him to that point. And well, let's first touch on why that's important. So Claude has built everything for Chris, and we want another model who is a free thinker to analyze what Chris has built and do that in a workflow, in the sense that every single day he builds, when he finishes with a feature or a branch, that he's running another model to verify, validate, and ensure that the model that he's using, in this case Claude, didn't miss anything or didn't create more problems, etc. Right?
Yep. Very true. Very, very true.
So with refactoring, it's just a fancy way of saying, changing how the code is organized, not what it does. So the Python files, we're not going to change what they're doing. We're going to change how they're organized. And if they're more organized and more cohesive, and let's say you have 500 lines of code and it's producing a front page that says google.com, and then you have another line of code separate of that, and it's 20 lines of code, but it's doing the exact same thing.
Yes.
We rather have the 20 lines of code doing the exact same thing, as long as we can ensure it's doing the exact same thing.
Yes.
And so 520, 480 lines of code are not necessary. Now, there's a lot of margin in between there. I'm not saying it's always going to be as explicit as that, right? And it's usually not. but I think that's a helpful visualization, right? And so that's one thing, looking through what Chris has done a little bit, is what I want to like start with. So that was all basically about in like what, the last 6 months.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And so the way you've been currently doing it though is reviewing with the same model that you've been building on, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then sometimes you've also created programs that are specific programs to go and do reviews or bug fixes separately from the model that you're using to build. Even though that model is creating those become different little pieces of software that run while your current model is what you're talking to. Correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, awesome.
There's one called like the groundskeeper or walker that walk
Yeah,
the code every night. And then
I
there's
love
the
that.
healer
I love
that's
that
supposed to go
name.
behind them and heal them
Right.
and stuff like that.
Right, exactly. And so like the groundskeeper is an awesome concept because you are using this with multiple clients of yours. And so while you're sleeping, you don't want things that are running for your clients to break and not know about it, or break and then not hopefully get fixed right away if it's something small. And so the
Yep.
groundskeeper is that 24/7 groundskeeper that's going around making sure the grounds. So that's a solid idea. I love that. 100%. But before we run Codex on 1,300 Python files, we got to talk about a couple other things, because
Yeah.
one, that's just way too many tokens and work and time and money to do that, for one. And it's going to probably find so many different things. It's going to make your head spin on where to start,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
So if we can
Exactly.
organize it better to start, then we can run Codex review. And again, we can use any review, but for Chris's example, we talked about this beforehand and decided Codex would be the best. But that's what we need to target, and then we can start targeting small subsets of your project with certain tools, and then start going in like that, especially where the areas you know you already have some issues, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so from what I just found, just by analyzing like your Git tree essentially, was
Yeah.
if we ran Codex, it would definitely leak some of your information
Ooh. Okay.
when it did the feedback. So
Ah.
that's good to know. Probably if you did it, nothing would happen, but it's not best practice, right?
Yeah.
So want to
Right.
be aware of that. And that goes back to the fact that if you have better organizational structures, this stuff should happen less, or hopefully not at all. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that in a minute. So here's a couple things too I want to touch on. So with all the Python files, the sprawl size, okay, that the size is fine. It's just the fact that the sprawl is killing the comprehension. And now we're going to be like, okay, what the heck does that mean? Right? So sprawl is the code that grew without anyone deciding where it goes. And
Okay.
so there's 600 files and folders with similar names and similar things inside, but there's no clear like door to walk through, and then there's no clear door to exit sometimes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so that's also going to cause issues when you're having the reviews going on. And so the coding tools, whether it's Claude or Codex, they can see related files together, and then the sprawl makes everything look unrelated. So AI gives generic and then low value reviews. So that's
Okay.
what we want to also address. Okay. And in the cron scripts, so the cron scripts basically is this, and Chris is well aware of this. It's like just like the groundskeeper. It's just this call that's saying, hey, at this time, do X,
Yep.
and then give me Y back. Essentially, it's just a simple call. It's a function call, essentially, and then it's just going to run at a certain time. But they're also living next to APIs in the same flat folder. And that becomes an issue because, well, okay, the API is something that a user or a system calls into. Okay, so that's where we're calling into it. And then the cron is running at a scheduled time. And then they have kind of totally two different life cycles. The API is running continuously, and then the cron fires once, and then it's done. And so mixing them together can cause bugs to occur because you have deployments, error handling, secrets, logging, all kind of in their different rules, but living in the same place. And so that's, again, another reason why this organizational structure is going to make a big impact. Okay. Because then when one cron crashes, takes down the API, or one API change breaks the cron, then you're gonna have them separate, and then you're gonna know and go in there surgically and target it. Okay?
That'd be nice. Yeah.
And then I'm not going to spend too much time on the rest of the stuff.
Operating via chainsaw works very well, Zach.
Yeah, you're really good with the chainsaw. We've talked about the chainsaw. And then a couple other pieces here too. I'm not going to address too much because this we will address with like what I give you later to just like use and talk with Claude about. But essentially, there's changes and fixes that you made, and so now you have like orphan files or backup files or broken and corrupted files that again are just kind of littered over the place, and again causing more of that confusion, right? So pretty straightforward there. And then the repo is also, there's tons of files in that place with no source, no app, just everything like again at the front door when you walk in, and it's like, whoa, where do I start? Right? And you haven't done the GitHub repo yet, have you, Chris?
I'm not. I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Okay, I just wanted to verify because we talked about it. I want to make sure you didn't do it. Why we
no, I did not do anything. I don't think I did.
No, Zach, anything on that before I continue?
No, I wouldn't add anything. I think it's good that you're giving some more like baseline explanations for like the everyday person watching this, because this is all stuff like this is where your expertise lies. So this is even good for me. I'm learning a lot.
And the cool thing, right, is you can be just like Chris and still fix all this stuff, or you can just start and then start with these as your general knowledge to start with and say, hey, Claude, like we don't do these. We want to make sure we do this organizational structure. And I've been just like Chris many times where that's not how I started. But again, the cool thing is we can fix all of this, which is awesome. And then everything that I'm saying now is stuff that I've learned in the last year and a half. It's not something that I went to school for or anything like that. So it's that hands-on with AI, and then me addressing the things I don't know and then learning as I go. So again, for everybody watching, like that's, I hope, one of the big takeaways everybody has here. Like if anything's confusing, that's fine. You're going to figure it out as you go forward.
And I think, I think that's a perfect thing, saying, yes, you can fix it where you are, or you can do it right from the beginning. You know,
exactly.
And
exactly.
Your first time building something, you're probably going to end up where I am, and you know, and you're going to learn from this, and that way, when you build your next thing, you have it right, and that's key.
Yeah, exactly. And then the cool thing though is like what you built still works.
Yeah,
it's just it's gonna work, and then you're gonna like trip, and then you're gonna fall, and you're gonna trip and fall more than you need to. And that's kind of why we started with the call in the first place, because you started tripping. You're like, oh yeah, well this is kind of annoying, and then there's that loop of tripping going on, and we got to fix that. So awesome. Okay, so 5 of the priorities I want to hit on first, and again, like these will be things that I'll just kind of hand off to you, but I think it's really valuable to go through these. So again, like we just said, it's like the project's not broken. That's not the point, right? So secrets in the repo tree, we already talked about that. And these are like the specifics of this. This will be a really quick and simple cleanup, okay? And then we're going to go over like the Git aspect of this too. Because if this is in Git, then those credentials will be compromised the moment anyone clones your repo. But you're not going to be having anybody clone your repo, so it's not really an issue in that sense. So again, it's more of a best practice thing. But like we talked about, the Codex review, it will quote them back in feedback, and therefore it will be living in memory files and potentially being dispersed to OpenAI somehow, some way, which again, all of these big companies are saying, we're not doing that, we're not stealing that. And I personally believe that it's not intentional, However, data is data, and it'll just go places.
Yep.
So again, one of those things we just want to be careful of. And I'll go over what we're going to do about that. So, and then zombie files, like these are an example of just files that have no depth or reason to be alive anymore. And so the naming structure as well can be things that are like, okay, well, is this important, or is this important to revert back to? And that's where we could run into issues where you're like, all right, revert back to this, but the naming structure is so similar, it could pick the wrong one to revert back to. So we want to clean that up a little bit as well. Okay. And then 3 is symlink loops, which again, just another fancy way of saying, think of the link being the operative word here is, okay, a symlink is a shortcut and it goes from file A to B, and touching A is the same as touching B. And so A points to a folder that contains A. And so now anything walking through the tree just goes in a circle. And so this can happen as well. And then when Claude is reading your whole project, the loop makes it reread the same file 2 or more times over, God forbid indefinitely. And then again, we're wasting time, tokens, and just confusion is taking place inside of the model at that point. So that'll be one thing we're addressing as well. And then this is a big one, because if you have something built already like Chris does, and you just like, all right, I'm going to bring in another model to review and just fix everything for me, it won't work as well, because you're going to burn so many different tokens on some of these loops that you don't know that are there. So the indexing organizational aspect of this, that's where it's really key, because it's happening over and over again. And then this is another one where you've had separate different versions. And so those versions can collide sometimes. And this is, again, another, we'll use Git to break this down to make more sense. The idea of branches. Oh, this is cool. So think of it as like parallel copies of your code that exist inside version control. So you can experiment on a branch without touching the main code. I visualize this better with like thinking of a tree, and then you're just like, your tree is your operating system that you've created, your agency system. And then you have branches on there today. And then when you build the next feature, you're going to have a branch on the ground that you're building on. And then you just add the branch onto the tree after you decided it's ready to add. And then if it's not, you're just like, this is trash. This does not work how I want it. I don't want it to actually attach to my tree anymore. So we just delete it, get rid of it, move it, or reorganize it. Or you say, like we are today, you have this awesome, super huge tree with all these different branches, and we're going to take off a branch because we think it's causing issues. And then the tree is still alive, but we can go work on this branch separately and not cause issues inside of the tree itself.
Oh, cool.
Does that make sense?
That's cool.
Okay. That's how I kind of look at it. And then the drowning signal, which is the root level markdown files exist to track manual cleanup. So again, you've had several goes at cleaning things up and reviewing, and then now there's just a little bit of bloat, and now it's like which one does what and which one is more important in the hierarchy. So again, same thing there, right? So what we want to start with to actually, where do you start with this, right? So we're going to need to make a revert point, because we want to make sure that what you have today is solid enough, and we don't want to mess that up. And as we start creating fixes, we want to make sure that we can go back at any time in case we run into something that we're not foreseeing to happen in the future, right? Obviously very important. So tag the current state in Git, and you have it labeled as the "Oh God" button. I thought that was hilarious. Anything that breaks, reset to here, and then we walk away clean. Okay. And then we're going to pre-clean the tree.
That is great.
So having this git ignore, this is stuff that is on your computer. And then we are saying we're going to put it in this git ignore file. And so nothing reads git ignore. And so it's completely ignored. And then codex ignore Same thing for, like we said, the zombies, the archives, the secrets, binary data, all that stuff. And then we're going to have phase 2 is scope first review. So like we said, we'll use Codex review, but we're not just going to run it on the whole thing yet. One file, and we'll start with chat API.py, which is a Python file, .py, and then you walk top 5 findings live, and then we fix, this is the huge one, I think, huge, is you fix the highest impact stuff first, and then you build trust within that loop. This is hard because when we're building, usually we do a whole bunch of different things at once, which is probably fine. I'm not saying that's a bad idea either. I'm just saying it's really good to be aware of the complexity of things. And so if you have something that's super complex, I usually will just build that one complex feature by itself. Even if I have some other subsect things that kind of make sense to are related, I won't do those with it because it does confuse the model sometimes. And this might be something in the next 6 months or next year that's not an issue at all, but it's definitely still an issue today. So when we find issues, I like having a MD that's like, okay, we have this review. We found 10 different issues. 2 of these are really high impact issues. And then the other 8, like not as important, but you might want to get to eventually, or medium and low tier, maybe something like that. And so then that is saved as a MD. And so you can always go back to that in that session or in another session, and then make sure that you're addressing those smaller things if you forgot about them. That shouldn't happen, but I like bringing that up because I think the framework of people when they're building, sometimes they're focusing on what they're building and then they're forgetting where they left off. And then they're asking Claude, and then Claude goes in and is like, well, we did this, this, and this. And then sometimes it picks up that 8, and then sometimes it only picks up a couple of those. So you just got to watch that. And so with this, because your system is so complex, which again is not a bad thing, but you want to really pick 1 or 2 things to go after based off the findings first, fix those, retest, verify that everything works, and then go to the next subset of those things. Okay? Any questions on that? Does that make sense?
No, that makes complete sense.
Okay. And then third is just like the reorganizational structure. And we'll touch on this in a minute. So
I
for
do have to
phase,
say, it's kind of funny that it has a sense of humor and named it "Oh God."
oh, I know, right? Well, I didn't do this before the call, but I think it got that from your file tree somewhere. So I'm wondering if you said that to Claude or if it was mine making a joke. I couldn't tell. but knowing Chris well enough, like I wouldn't be surprised if he had an actual "Oh God" button. Okay, so phase 0, 5-minute revert button. Okay, so this is what you're gonna like paste into Claude to run. And
Okay.
so let's understand what this actually is. The GitHub repo in it, if not. So I don't think you have this set up, so it will set this up for you. So the git status is checking, and then if not, we're gonna run this command in it, which is basically creating one. And then it's going to take a snapshot before we do the Codex review, right? And then it's going to upload all of that and make sure that it's there. And you can do this locally or online with GitHub as well. It doesn't really matter. GitHub is free for a very large amount of data, so that shouldn't be a problem. But then we're tagging it, right? The pre-Codex review, and then the cleanup is where we're going to start. Okay.
Okay.
And then with the phase 1, you're going to do git ignore and the codex ignore, because we want to make sure these things are not being brought into that before we start doing the actual work.
Okay.
And then scope, this is where we unleash it, not on the 1300 files, but we pick one module and we can start with this. And so again, this is what you're actually going to give to Claude. Okay.
Okay.
And then this is, I think, the most important, valuable thing. And this is not the best way. This is just how I think about it. And so if you throw this into Claude and say, based off of what we've done, where do you agree and where do you disagree on this? It's probably a good place to start, because like I just explained this GitHub tree as a visual tree. I'm such a visual learner that this really makes sense to me. But I'm sure there's other ways to organize and do this that are just as good, if not better. So take the principle away, not exactly how I'm doing it. So
Okay.
the folder convention, which we talk a lot about here in the Zero to Automated community, um, this is your agency operating system. And then start having more of this organizational structure of all of your agents live in one folder, all of your workflows live in one folder, all of your integrations, and then the data, and then under the data would be like your assets, your subfolders and all that stuff. And then you can go into uh, a developer environment like VS Code, Cursor, or Anti-Gravity, or you can just open up your Finder window and you can see this in a more structural way. And so when Claude talks to you about fixing things, you can go and look what it's talking to or talking about, and then you can have a much better understanding of what it's doing, and then probably catch it from doing things you don't want it to do every once in a while. That's still
Yeah.
pretty rare nowadays because 4.7 and 4.6 are so good. But I think that also will allow you to understand what it's doing. Because sometimes I bet it's explaining things and it's saying, we go to A, B, and then we do E, and then we do Y, and then back to M. And you're like, wait a second, how does that work? And it works, but it's really hard. And more tokens are taking place to read that and then go here and then go back. And so this is like a simple representation of how just that little bit of organization on the hierarchical structure can make a huge difference.
Okay.
And then, like we already talked about, this is not in Git, so we want to make sure we do that. And then the v2 v3 files, this is what we're gonna have to ask Claude. Are they still serving traffic for the operating system, or are they actually old versions that we don't need to consider? So we'll definitely ask that up front as well. And then the account JSONs, are they fully rotated? Yes, confirm before we alarm the system. Okay.
Okay.
And then, so here's kind of like the walkthrough, right? The simple walkthrough is we're going to tag where you're at. We're going to audit the repo for the secrets, fix that, make sure they're in the ignored files that we need them. And then
Yep.
we're going to pick one file to go after with Codex.
Okay.
Okay. Zach, you got anything on that?
Nope.
So, Chris, how do you want to start to do this? I'm thinking I can copy and paste what I
Yep.
just
I'll
showed
share
you.
my screen if you want to put it in the chat window. I'll paste it
Yes.
into the terminal and I'll share my screen and we can.
Perfect.
Zach went so still, I think he froze.
Here we go.
Oh, it did freeze. That's funny. Okay. And now.
All right, I can see your screen. Looks good.
Yeah, I can also
Okay.
see it.
Good. Okay. And
So this is the exact terminal like guidelines, but Claude's smart enough it's going to know what to do with it. Just so everybody that's watching is clear on why we're CDing. That's yep. Okay, so it's already figuring out it's not a Git repository, which we already knew. Yep. And then environment files contain secrets. Good. Yep. So it's saying, okay, we have this running, create a fresh empty repo that scoops up. Good. So it's taking the snapshot. And so it says all three repos. So this is a perfect example of what we were talking about, right? You have the portal, the walker, and then the data.
and what ended up happening was I had the groundskeeper, and then for some reason it did not check the file before building it and started building the walker on top of the groundskeeper, and then it tries saying that they're two different things, and I'm like, are they though?
Okay. Make this like 3 times bigger for me, like wider.
You got it.
Okay, all three repos snapshotted, tagged, and on the new branch. Clean working trees across the board. Okay, awesome. Okay, and then 2 things you should know. Itself is not the Git repo. Your one-liner assumed it was. The actual repos are the 3 nested ones. So, yep, correct. The agency OS was like a placeholder that we were using because obviously I didn't have access to your code. And then tell me if you wanted just one most likely AI portal, since that's where the yep, okay. Walker had no Git identity configured, set it locally, matching AI portal so the snapshot could commit. No, not global, just repo. Save. Okay, done 3 repos snapshotted, tagged. On branch, all clean, ready for review, work. Okay, perfect.
And do we need to fix this? Is this supposed to be my email address here or my login?
Set it locally to.
Because it's actually without agency. It's just chris@barble.com is my email.
Oh,
address.
okay. That's okay. I think it's using it as a
Okay.
your local naming structure. That's okay.
Okay.
Yeah. 1 sec. All right, let me get this in there. All right, and then let's go. Oh, it's too large. Okay.
Oops.
I'll can I text it to you, Chris? Will that be fine?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I'll do
course.
that. You should be able to copy and paste it still. Okay, so I sent him before we run Codex, and then we're giving examples of the zombies and the dead code archives and the secrets to make sure that they're not involved.
Appreciate you guys doing this a ton.
And then I'm going to, of course, send you one more.
Okay.
Go ahead and wait till this is done.
Yep.
So the next one I sent you will help us install the Codex review system.
Oh wow.
Okay, three
Okay.
things to do here in order. Check what's already tracked. Yeah, good. Perfect. All right, that's going to take a minute to do. It's going to go through all
Okay.
that. So in the meantime, Zach is going to sing to us.
What song you like, Chris?
Let's go with a little Foo Fighters. Let's hear.
I'm gonna hold off. the
Good. So we
process.
tracked the files down. Secrets
Let's go.
check. 2 fixes. Yep. Recurring dirty file. Dirty file. Oof.
That's apparently where I screamed and yelled at it to say, "Hey, that's this thing."
That's where all the expletives are.
It did have jokes for me when I accidentally called it Gronk. It's like, do you really want Gronk, the football player, trying to make decisions for you? He's not that bright of a guy. And I'm like, wow, even AI knows about him. Wow. All right.
Go up arrow once for me.
Okay.
Oh, go down now. There we go. Okay. Nope. Go back. I want you front line. Yeah. On
Do you
top
want me
of
to get
that.
rid of this code here?
No. That's what I mean. So keep the code. Go to the
hold
left
on.
bracket.
Let me throw this code. This is the code that's the newest code.
Okay, perfect. And then yeah, hover over that first bracket. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So I want you to say yes, get ignore AI portal for now, but add it to our task list to address after our first run of Codex. That's something that I would definitely want to look at more, but for what we're doing today, it's not imperative. So, but I do want to make sure the system is aware of it and we get a reminder to come back to it.
Did I put that in right?
Yep, perfect.
Nice.
And then 1 sec. The 13 untracked files are still on disk. If you want them physically gone from Codex, in case Codex reads files rather than get, say so. Leave. Go ahead and type this. Leave the 13 untracked for now. Add to task list as well. And remind me to rotate secrets after first run. Perfect. Okay. And then, yeah. And then
Here's
enter.
a question real quick.
Yeah.
Bring this over here. Do I need to change this at all? Load. This is the governance of, that's the round table. Let's see.
Yeah. As of now, no.
No. Okay, cool.
Basically think of it as 2 separate things. Is like that
Cool.
that'll be, yeah. That's something that you can continue to build on, essentially.
Okay. I just
Yeah.
didn't know if it was going to
And
be a
for,
pain like, hey,
yeah,
you
I don't,
told me
yeah,
don't
I'm
let.
glad you brought it up. It's, I don't think it's going to affect us at all. Let's see what
Cool.
happens. Perfect. And then once it verifies it understands the install codex, I think we'll leave you to it, Chris, because we're running out of time.
Okay.
But we'll definitely get an update from you on how that goes.
Okay.
But
That'd be awesome.
essentially now, once this finishes, and it'll walk you through the steps of installing Codex now. And
Okay.
I threw in the reminders as well for the git ignores. I do not want those to be forgotten. So it'll verify and double check that as well. But now you're going to have the ability to do a / review, which will be a
Okay.
skill that is brought in for Codex specifically. So you're bringing in the different model to review whatever you're in. And then we talked about too, doing an IDE potentially for you, a development environment, so you could better visualize what was going on. And again, that's going to be something that you might try and then not like or something like that. But that's definitely like probably the next thing I would say to start
Okay.
working with. And so from the like the bird's eye view is you have your file structure that is in different Git branches. So when you change features, add features, you have a structured way of doing that. And then up here, that bird looking down is what you're looking through. So right now we're looking through the terminal and we're seeing what it's doing with the bash commands. But you can do this if we have the sun looking down at the bird, and the sun is the development environment that can help you better visualize the bird and then the bird underneath that. And
Okay.
then you will start building in this structured way moving forward, and you should have way less problems and way less bugs. And then when something does break, the system will be able to go through it in a structured way. And then you, as the user, should be, like you're in God mode looking down at the sun and the birds, right? And now you
Yeah.
can really visualize what's happening instead of
Okay.
right now inside of the terminal, which again is fine. And some people actually enjoy this more than I do. I spend more time in the terminal than IDE,
I do as
but
well.
that'll just depend, right?
Okay.
And then for some use cases, I always use IDE. For other use cases, I'm in the terminal. So it just depends. But
Okay.
again, you can see now it's a perfect example. Installing Codex CLI, and then it's got a little task list, configure, write.
Yep.
That's all going to happen inside of your IDE, but you're going to be able to see all of your files that are being addressed. And for you, because it's such a big system now, I think you're going to need that
Okay.
because it's just going to get too complicated if you're working on this tool and this tool at the same time in the terminal. It's going to be very confusing to you on where you're at in your system.
Okay.
So that'd be something we can talk about in the future and work on. But this
Sounds
looks like
good.
it's on path and going to be working for you to install the Codex. And then, like I said, once it's done, it'll be just / review, and it'll obviously walk you through that. But you'll
Okay.
run your first review on, and it already has that delineated there, the AI_portal / it's picking one of your Python scripts to start with instead of all 1,300 of them, right?
Okay.
So again, very important for now. And I'm not saying you're going to have to do this 1,300 times, but to
Yeah.
get used to it and then also get an idea of what Codex picks up first, doing that a couple times will be helpful for you. And then you can run it on the whole thing when you're ready, essentially.
Okay. Okay. And then I should probably also work towards eliminating those doubles and triplet that I have of different things as well.
Definitely.
Cool.
And I think Codex is going to tell you that right away. My best guess
Cool.
is yes.
Okay.
So it'll help you do that.
Sounds good.
And then
All
one
right.
more best practices before we sign off is keep thinking about, and you and I have talked about this is more about viewers, but keep thinking about what is your personal workflow for working through and producing these workflows or outcomes or scripts or anything you're building, And it, for instance, is you have to manage your context window. And then inside of that, we need to make sure that the tasks are clearly laid out and the tasks are actually going to get to an outcome. And then the outcome, once it's been done, there is a way to verify that. And then make sure that those steps are being tracked in some sort of memory or next steps resume file, something like that. So if anything happens where your power goes out, you restart your PC, you're not going to lose all of that context. And then you also know exactly what task you were on. And then when it finishes and the AI is doing all the work for us, which we love, there is a way to verify it. And then that verification has a running memory file reminding the model itself what it needs to be doing to make sure it's actually working and verifying. So we're not doing that dead loop of not getting anywhere and just, you know, running on a treadmill.
Makes sense.
Cool.
All right.
Awesome. Zach, any
Thank
last
you
words?
so much.
I don't believe so. Yeah, Chris, thanks for hopping on. Glad
Yeah.
we made this happen. I hope to run into you when I'm back in the States.
Yeah.
somewhere up in-
When you get back, we will definitely go grab a cup of coffee for sure.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you
All right,
so
Chris,
much.
thanks a
Have
lot.
safe
Really
trip.
appreciate you doing this, and hopefully we helped you a little bit.
Yeah, sure. All right, guys. Thanks again.
All right, take care. Have a great day.
You too.